to be confident in what God has called you to. We are so glad that you chose to join us today at Christian Life Center. Look at somebody beside you and say, you are equipped. We're so glad that you guys chose to join us today. Welcome to everybody that is on CLC live stream as well. Wherever you're watching from, we're so glad that you chose to join us today. Be sure and drop down in the comments and tell us exactly where it is you're watching from. And we would love to know that. Also, if you have a prayer need, post that in the comments section. Our prayer team would love to be able to pray for you today. We're so excited about what God is doing at CLC. And we're wrapping up our Equip series today. And today is Vision Sunday. Vision Sunday, where we are finishing up what we've talked about with equipping and what God is calling us to in vision. We've got to know where God's called us to. And as we are equipped for Vision Sunday, God puts purpose in our lives. And today we're talking about being equipped for kingdom impact. God has called us to make a kingdom impact. And in making that kingdom impact, He gives us instruction. He helps us to know exactly how to make a kingdom impact. And you are equipped to accomplish God's vision. Everybody in this room, you're equipped to accomplish God's vision. If you have your orange welcome packet, grab that because there's notes inside of there. You can follow along with us with those notes. But you have to know that you're equipped to accomplish God's vision, because you've got to understand that once you grab God's heart and you get His heart, you know that He's got something greater for you to do. You see, God's heart was to deliver the children of Israel, the Israelites as we call them, to deliver them from a place God had called them to. You see, God made a promise to them, and God's heart was to deliver them from the Egyptian bondage. And to accomplish His vision, He told them, I'm giving you a land. It's called the Promised Land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. It's a land that's plentiful. It's a land that's abundant. And I'm calling you to that land. I'm calling you to that place to accomplish His vision. And in the midst of all of that, as he called them there, you might have heard this story before. You might wonder what the Promised Land is. But see, the Promised Land just simply signifies God made a promise to them to give them this land. And He gave them this place, and He called them with a vision and gave them that vision. But I want to tell you a story that goes along with that. You see, God's heart was that they would find this place. He gave them vision. Here's the location. Here's the place. Here's what I'm doing for you. But in all of that, there were people that didn't necessarily believe. As a matter of fact, God had called Moses to lead them, to be their pastor, to lead them from Egyptian bondage to this promised land, this place, this location. And in the whole picture of that, when He called them to do that, Moses then sent out some spies, scouts, if you will, to check out this land that was promised. So He sent them there. He said, I want you to go and see what's there, see if the land is plentiful and abundant, and see what we've got to do to take the land that's there. You see, it was God's heart that they would receive this promise. It was God's heart that He would lead them from bondage into this new place. So these 12 spies, if you will, scouts, they went there, and they viewed all the land that was there. And when they got there, they realized, man, this land is great. It's not Egyptian bondage anymore. This land is plentiful. There's a lot of things that we're going to be able to have here that we didn't have in Egyptian bondage. As a matter of fact, the land is flowing with milk and honey, and fruit is growing like crazy. So they've seen all the same things. 12 spies, 12 scouts, if you will. They've seen this land, this promised land that God had given to them. As a matter of fact, to show Moses exactly how bountiful the place was, they carried a cluster of grapes back. It was hung over a pole that two men carried. And these two men, they walked back to Moses. Said, look at how huge this fruit is here. Look at how plentiful and how big it is. You see, they not only heard and seen or heard about God's vision, but they actually got to go there to this land that was promised to them. And they seen how the fruit was so big, and they seen how the land was plentiful, and there was milk and honey, and they've been living in scarcity. They've been living in poverty. They've been living in bondage. They've been living, somebody telling them what to do, but God's heart was that He would give them plenty. He gave them a vision of this place. The 12 spies returned back, and after they got back, they talked to Moses, and they began to tell Moses the account of their trip. They got back there, and as they as they got back, there was a difference in opinion. There was 12 spies, but 10 of them said one thing, and 2 of them said something different. As a matter of fact, 10 of the spies said, well, yeah, the land is plentiful. And look here, you can see the grapes are huge that are there. But you need to know that the cities are fortified. They got walls around them. And Moses, you need to know that there are giants in the land. But you see, there were 2 who had a different opinion. Their names were Joshua and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb had a different opinion. They seen the same things. They seen and heard the vision. God's given us this land, and it's going to be flowing with milk and honey, and it's plentiful and bountiful there. And they all went, 12 spies, and they viewed the land, and they seen what was there. But 10 of them thought, well, we can't do that. We can't defeat the cities. There's no way we can go in. There's giants that are living there. But Joshua and Caleb said, I believe we can. Because I know it's a land God promised us. We can do it. So I want to give you an account of that whole story as I've caught you up here. We're going to go to the Bible in Numbers chapter 13. If you have your Bible, I want to invite you to turn there. If you have YouVersion on your phone, you're welcome to go there. It'll be on the screen. It's also in your notes. But in Numbers chapter 13 verse 27, this is the account. In verse 27, it says, this was their report to Moses. We entered into the land you sent us to explore, and it is indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is the kind of fruit that it produces. Remember, they brought the big cluster of grapes back, and they're showing Moses this is what it produces. But then it says this, but the people. Let me tell you, sometimes your but will get you in trouble, right? But the people living there are powerful. There are towns that are large and fortified. We even seen giants there, the descendants of Enoch. You see, these people, these 10, had a different view. They seen the same things that Joshua and Caleb seen. The 12 spies seen how bountiful the country was. They're even making a statement about it here in the scripture. Yes, and you see the kind of fruit. We've got the fruit right here. But the people there, they're powerful. But the cities are fortified. But there are giants there. They're huge. Huge giants. You see what they seen the things that they thought they couldn't accomplish. They seen the things that were work. They seen the things that they thought were bigger than what God's vision was. And I wonder how in the world 10 and 2, 10 spies plus Joshua and Caleb all seen the same thing, but they came back telling a different story. Not really a different story. It's the same story, but one believed and one didn't. 10 didn't, but 2 did. And I wonder what the difference was. I wonder what the difference really was. Why that the 10, because of their attitude, because of what they thought they knew. Now get this. The same God that created the heavens and the earth, the same God that breathed life into man, the same God that suspended the stars and the moon, created the galaxies and the sun and causes all of that to work, that same God gave them a vision. They got the vision. It was God's heart that they would leave Egyptian bondage, and God gave them this promised land they're going to go to, and they had a vision. But you see, their vision couldn't look past their carnal eyes. Their vision couldn't see past they're huge giants that are there. They couldn't see past that. They couldn't see past the point that these people are powerful. They couldn't see past the point that the cities are fortified. What are we going to do? But Joshua and Caleb made a different statement. Joshua and Caleb said something different. And I wonder what sometimes we miss, and we miss this, is that it'll be on the screen. It says this. It says, our battle is won in the spirit before the physical. Our battle is won in the spirit. Sometimes what happens is we don't realize the battle is won in the spirit before the physical. All they seen was huge giants, powerful people, cities that are fortified. But you see, Joshua and Caleb had a relationship with God. They had a time of maybe prayer with God. You see, to win in the spirit before the physical, it begins with a life of prayer. I've asked our ushers to help us this morning. They're going to come and we're going to pass some buckets down the row. And I'm going to ask everybody here to reach in the bucket and grab 2 things that are out of there. You're going to grab a bracelet that looks like this right here. And on that bracelet, it simply says 2 words: pray first. To pray first. You see, you have to understand and realize that the battle is won in the spirit before it is the physical. The battle is won in prayer. As a matter of fact, we here at CLC today, we are finishing up 21 days of prayer. We challenge you, I ask you as your pastor to partner with us and to take this card 3 weeks ago and to pray daily together, to pray daily over these things. Also in that bucket is another thing. It's a little sticker like this right here. I'm going to ask everybody to grab one of these equip stickers because this is the word that God has called our church to for this year. We are going to equip ourselves for kingdom impact. This is your sticker. I'm going to encourage you to stick that somewhere. It's on my phone case is where I stuck mine. Maybe you stick it on your laptop or maybe you stick it on a notebook that you take to school. But to be equipped, what are we equipping ourselves for? We're being equipped for God's vision. We're being equipped to accomplish the vision God has given to us. And in doing so, we have to realize that the battle is won in the spirit before the physical. Too many times we look at how huge the problem is. I can't do that. I don't have the talent. I don't have the skill. Well, I don't really want to do the work is what we say sometimes. We say it without saying it. We're like, well, it's just too much. And all the while, God is calling us. And what too many people miss is simply this one thing. If you get nothing else, please get this today. Get this one thing. It's on the screen. Our battle is won in the spirit before it is the physical. Put the bracelet on and realize, pray first. Pray about everything. Pray before you make a decision about buying a car. Pray before you make a decision about buying a house. By all means, if you are looking for somebody to marry for the rest of your life, please pray about that. Pray about the job you're going to take. Pray about the promotion that you want. Pray. Just simply first pray. Pray first before you do anything else. The problem is what so many people do is they don't pray first. Actually, what they do, prayer should be our first response rather than our last resort. And what happens is we wait till last. Well, I've tried everything else. I might as well pray now. Really? You see, prayer should be the first response, not the last resort. The thing that we do, we've got to learn to pray. You see, God has called us to so much more. And if you're going to have the heart of God, it begins with praying first. So I want to challenge you. I've given you a bracelet just simply as a reminder. You've got a sticker about this is about our church for the whole year. You're going to hear us talk about being equipped to accomplish the vision of God. You see, God's got a much greater call in your life, but it comes by you understanding and knowing. You got to believe it yourself. Other people may tell you can't do it. I want to tell you what you believe in your own heart and what God has given you a vision for, you can do because He will equip you to do it. Get this. I'm going to read some more scripture in Numbers chapter 13, verse 30. Now remember what the 10 spies just said? Listen to what Caleb said. Numbers chapter 13, verse 30, it goes on to say this. But Caleb tried to quiet the people as they stood before Moses. He said, let's go at once and take the land. He said, we can certainly conquer it. You see, Caleb spoke with heart. Caleb spoke with heart. In Numbers chapter 13, verse 30, he spoke with heart. He had his heart in it. And he was saying, I believe we can do this. What happens too many times is people get lax. People get lazy. People sit back and say, well, I don't know if we can do that or not. I'm not real sure if I can keep up with that or not. I don't really know if I'm talented to do that or not. And what happens sometimes is people begin to speak into our lives. 10 spies come back and say, we can't do it. The giants are huge. They're huge. They're big. They're huge. We can't do this. The people are powerful. The cities are fortified. But you know what Joshua and Caleb said? They said the same thing. Yep, there's giants there. Yep, the people are powerful. Yep, the cities are fortified. But I believe we can conquer this. You know why they believed it? Because they believed the vision that God told them. I want to tell you, God's got a purpose for your life, and He's got vision for your life. But you have to believe it. There will be people in your life who will not believe in you. But they had vision. It takes vision from God. And God has a vision for every person in this room. God has a purpose for your life. What happens sometimes, we surround ourselves with the wrong people. Well, you can't do that. Remember, 10 spies and 2 spies, all 12 seen exactly the same thing. And 10 of them said, there's no way you can't do it. The problem with too many of us is you're surrounding yourself with the wrong people. Negative people speaking into your life. Negative people speaking into your dreams. Negative people speaking into God's vision for your life. When God tells you something, you can bank on it. And that's exactly what Joshua and Caleb did. They believed the vision that God had gave to Moses. He said, Moses, go and lead my children out of Egyptian bondage. Take them to this promised land, this land that I promised to them. And if God makes you a promise, do you think he breaks his promises? Now tell me how 10 of the 12 men of God, knowing that God created the heavens and the earth, knowing that God breathed life into man, knowing that God dropped the stars into existence, but yet they didn't believe the promise? Some of you are missing out on the blessings of God today because you failed to believe the promise. Some of us are missing out on what God has for us that is so much larger than ourselves because we failed to believe the promise. These 10 men, they failed to believe the vision God gave to them. They failed to believe the promise of God. But I love what Caleb said. He said, but I believe we can conquer it. It takes heart. I love this quote. It'll be on the screen by Pastor Robert Morris. It says, if your vision doesn't seem impossible to accomplish in your own natural ability, it's probably not from God. It's probably not from God. If you're like, man, I think I can do this, I think I can accomplish this, let me go ahead and tell you, that's not from God. Because the vision from God is much bigger than you are. It's bigger than what you feel you have the talent and the skill to do. It's bigger than your pocketbook and your budget. It's bigger than what you seem possible. But remember a scripture that says something like this, if it seems impossible to man, it's possible with God. And some of us fail to recognize that. God gave a vision to Moses. 12 men went and checked out the land. 10 come back. They were negative naysayers. What some of you need to do is get the negative naysayers out of your life. Let me tell you how to help you with your dreams and vision. Quit hanging out with the wrong people. Quit hanging out with people that tell you you can't do it, that's too big, what makes you think you're able to do that? Quit hanging out with the people that are speaking down to you. Hang with people that will speak life into you. Hang with people that say, I believe in you. Hang with people that will say this, hey, God's got a purpose in your life, and if you will seek him, you will find it. Because God has vision for our lives. If it seems impossible, then it's from God. If you think you can do it, it's not from God. Because you can't do it in yourself. It only comes from him. Vision has to be dropped into our heart. Now get this. In Numbers chapter 13, I'm going to read some more in verse 31. Listen to what these 10 spies continued to say. It said, but the other men who had explored the land with him disagreed. They're disagreeing with Caleb. They said, we can't go up against them. They're stronger than we are. So they spread the bad report about the land among the Israelites. The land we travel through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. And all the people we saw were huge. They were huge. We can't beat them, they're huge. I mean, really? Listen to what they're saying. Get this. We can't go up against them. They're stronger than we are. So they spread the bad report to everybody. Quit hanging around people that are spreading bad news around you. God has called you. God has a purpose for you. God has a call on your life, and he will equip you for his calling and his purpose. If you've been at this church very long, you've heard me say the talents, the skills, the gifts that God has given you, it is not for yourself, but he equipped you to impact the kingdom of heaven. He calls us to equip us to accomplish his vision. And when we do that first, guess what? All the other stuff he's going to take care of. But we get so consumed. Here's these guys. We can't do it. They're too huge. Here was the sin of the spies. Not trusting in what God promised. That was their sin. And you know what their sin got them? Get this. They seen the land. Joshua and Caleb seen the land. Joshua and Caleb said, we can do it. But their sin destroyed them. The sin of these 10 spies, the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness for years. And all of the 10 spies and the generation of them that believed that, they all died while they were wandering in the wilderness. They never seen the promised land. They never got to the promised land. You know why? Because they doubted the vision God gave them. Can I tell you something? Don't doubt the vision God's given to you. Don't doubt the vision that God has given to this church. If you can't support the vision of this church, if you can't support where God has called us to, please leave today and don't come back. That's what I'm asking you to do. Because God has called us with purpose. God has called us to do something bigger than ourselves. God has called us to reach our community and make a difference. And when He calls us, He will equip us. We don't need a bunch of people running around saying you can't do it. We need people that will stand up and say, I don't care how huge the giants are. I don't care that the people are powerful. I don't care that the cities are fortified. You can do it. I want to tell you what you need around you is people telling you you can do it. Sarah, you can make it. Don't quit, Sarah. You can do it. And that's what we need in our lives. We need people to say, Chad, you can do it. I don't care what other people said about you. I don't care what people know about your past. You can do it because God called you. See, that's the people you need around you. Quit surrounding yourself with the negative naysayers who are going to talk down. God's got vision for your life. And it begins in the Spirit. It begins with prayer. It begins to pray first before you do anything else. I wrote something that I asked him to put on the screen. It's inconceivable to me that this same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives in me to do nothing. The same power that raised up Jesus from the dead didn't equip you to do nothing. He called you. He purposed you. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. Look at somebody and say, He's in you. Tell them, He's in you. And we think that He saved us to do nothing. You've heard me say this every single week of this series. It's simply this. God didn't save you to go to church on Sunday and go to heaven when you die. He saved you for much more than that. Too many people, that's what they're doing. Oh, if I can just make it to church on Sunday, I'll please God. Oh, here, pat myself on the back. I made it an hour and 15 minutes to church this week. Well, congratulations. You see, God didn't save you just to do that and make it to heaven, but He has a purpose in your life. He has a call in your life. He has a vision for your life. The heart of God, the purpose of God, the vision of God. Sometimes when we lack faith and we spread like negative Nelly around everybody else, guess what? We miss vision. You see, here at our church a few weeks ago, God began to speak to my heart, and I shared it a couple of weeks ago. You're going to hear all about this year, a brand new initiative that's called Love the 573. Love the 573. 573 is the area code in our area around here, and we have people that are visiting our church, people that are attending our church, get this, from 13 other cities around us. All of those are in the 573 area code. And our heart, God put in my heart that we would make an impact in those communities, not just Rolla. We're not a church just for Rolla. God called us to Vienna. God called us to St. Robert and Waynesville. And God's called us to St. James and Vichy and Crocker and Sullivan and Cuba and Steelville. And then we have people that attend our church from all those areas. We're going to love the 573. And God has called us to some community initiatives. He's going to equip us that in every city we make kingdom impact. That is the vision of God. And sometimes what happens is we miss His vision. We miss the calling of God because we're not listening. Well, maybe we heard Him say He'd give us the promised land, but I got there and it was too huge. It was huge, right? That's too huge. Those giants are huge. Really? And we miss what God has called us to simply love the 573. You see, Joshua and Caleb, they were 2 out of 12. They were 2 that believed. They were 2 that had a heart for God. They were 2 that prayed first. They were 2 that knew that they were equipped by God. And what happens sometimes, we fail to reach people because we think it's too big of a problem. Their sin is too great. They ran from church too long. They told me that if they go into church, the whole roof's going to cave in. And you know what? We separate people from God. I love what Pastor Craig Rochelle says. It's a quote that will be on the screen. It says this: to reach people that nobody else is reaching, we got to do stuff nobody else is doing. It's pretty simple. We got to do stuff nobody else is doing if we're going to reach people nobody else is reaching. And get this. That's exactly what Joshua and Caleb did. Let me tell you a little bit more of this story. If you fast forward, 40 years wandering in the wilderness, remember all the 10 spies and all their generation died. The people didn't believe, they died. They never got to the promised land. So here's Joshua and Caleb. They're standing at the Jordan River, and the Jordan is the only thing separating them from the promised land. And Joshua decides, I'm going to send 2 spies in to the city of Jericho, the first city, okay, the first city to be taken down. I'm going to send 2 spies in. We're going to see what we need to do to defeat the city and for victory to come for God's people. So he sends 2 spies in. They're looking around. They're trying to figure it all out. The king hears that 2 spies are there. The king hears that the Israelites are looking to come in and take over. The king gets fearful, so he starts hunting for these 2 spies that Joshua has sent in 40 years later. So fast forward now, remember, 40 years later, Joshua and Caleb are the only 2 that survived the whole deal because the others didn't believe. Now Joshua sent in two spies, and the men that are in there as spies, they end up at someone's house. It's a lady named Rahab, and Rahab is a prostitute. That's what the Bible says. And she hides them away from the king so the king won't kill them. Rahab is a prostitute, a person far from God, a person nobody wants to reach, a person that we would say, well, I don't know if we can reach them. That's huge. She's a prostitute, right? We can't reach them. They're an addict. That's too big for God. And you know what happens? This prostitute hides away the 2 spies. The king doesn't find them. So the spies make their way back out. God tells Joshua, here's what you got to do. You're going to march around the city 7 times. On the 7th time when you march around, make a loud shout. The walls are going to fall. But Joshua says, before we march around the city, I want you to go in. I want you to find Rahab, and I want you to find all of her family, and you bring them out to safety. Now I want you to listen to what just happened. The people that didn't believe, their whole generation died. They never got to the promised land. They're ready now, 40 years later, to take the city, and here's what's going to happen. They're going to take the whole city down, and here it is, this moment. They send 2 spies in. A prostitute hides them away. But yet, who is saved out of all the people in the city? The prostitute and all of her family. You see, that's what God calls us to do, is to reach people. And in our minds, I think we've missed the fact of what God has called us to do. The vision report was, I've given you the land. Go and take the land. And we miss it sometimes. Here at CLC, God is going to help us to be equipped in 2019 to do 3 things that we're going to be able to reach people. And here's those 3 things. They'll be on the screen. To serve the local church. That God has called you to serve and to share the gospel. And then last of all, He's called us to sow into the harvest. It's pretty easy. Simply 3 things. Serve, share, and sow. Serve, share, and sow. Serve the local church. Share the gospel. And to sow into the harvest. God has called you and I to do those things. To sow, to share, to serve the local church. And when we do that, we realize God has purposed us with something greater than what we are, greater than what we have. I love the fact of what a man by the name of Edgar Allan Poe once said. It's a quote that is on the screen. I learned a long time ago that those who are the happiest are those who do the most for others. You see, what God has called you and I to do is to make an impact, to accomplish His vision. But it's not going to come without work. It's not going to come without sacrifice. It's not going to come without initiative from each of us. Today, for the end of the message, I've asked the ushers, if they would, to help me. And they're going to pass buckets again. And when they do, they're going to pass by a packet that looks like this. I'm going to ask every person to grab this out. It's 3 or 4 pieces of material. And I want to walk with you through what I believe God is calling us to do. Just pass the bucket, if you would. Every person just grab one of these packets out. And I'm going to ask you to grab that, and I'm going to walk you through some things, because here's what I believe. I believe that God is calling Christian Life Center to something greater than what 1 or 2 people can accomplish. As a matter of fact, you might not know this, but here at this church, there are 150 volunteers that volunteer their time in serving on a dream team at our church. If you're new to CLC today, if this is your first time here or you're a guest, I'm not asking anything from you at all, but you're welcome to participate. But if this is your church, I'm going to challenge you today. I'm challenging you to serve the local church, to use your giftings and talents, to make an impact, to accomplish the vision God called us to. Don't be a negative naysayer. Walk around and say, well, we can't do that. I'm going to challenge you to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with people in your local community, to start a group wherever you live, to reach people, to start a fun thing where you can draw people to come to some event, some community event, to make a difference. And I'm going to challenge you, last of all, to sow into the harvest. To sow into the harvest. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, to grab this packet. And literally, we're going to walk through it today. The first one, I think, on here should be this serve one. If it's not, would you grab that? There are pens in your seat back. Or you can ask someone around you to borrow a pen. Because I'm going to give you an opportunity to fill this out. Again, if you're a guest here, we ask nothing from you. But if this is your church, this is where you're being fed. If we're your pastors, I'm going to ask you to make a difference in the local church, to use your giftings and talents for the kingdom of God. There are so many things on this paper where you can serve. You see, when you see people serving around here, like the Source Coffee Shop was open, that's all volunteers. And a lot of people that signed up to serve there, they didn't know how to run a cash register or make coffee. But you know what? They didn't have to know that. We trained them. We taught them. I'm going to challenge you to take a look at this card for a minute, kind of review it, and just ask God to, maybe, God, what can I do to make a difference? Impact in so many different ways. Ways that you might not even know or realize. You see, there are people that serve at our church literally maybe an hour a month. But there are people that serve 2 hours a week. There's some people that even serve 10 hours a week as volunteers. There's so many different things on here that we want to ask you to make a difference. As a matter of fact, this beautiful painting you see, we didn't pay for that. That's by Josh, who attends our church. He's got a talent. So he said, man, I'd love to be able to use my talent for the kingdom of God. You see, you can make a difference somehow. The second thing that you see in your packet is sharing the gospel. On this paper right here, this one, it says groups. I'm going to invite you to sign up for a group. There's something on here I want to have you to make a couple of changes on. You see this? Everybody look right up here. You see the bottom of this right over here? This bottom statement says, no perfect people allowed, right? We're not perfect, so we made a mistake on this card. So I want to tell you about it. We have a group that's going to be happening on Saturday nights, right? And that's not on this card. But if you are interested in a group on Saturday, write in just the word Saturday. Also, the Wednesday group that says St. Robert, that is actually going to be in Crocker, Missouri, not in St. Robert. But we want to invite you to join us in a group. Now, here's what you probably don't know about groups. Groups is where care takes place. Groups is something that meets every couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, in your seat back pocket, there's some cards that look like this that tells you all about the different type groups we have, life groups, interest groups, connect groups. You can find out about that. But group life is where we do life together. Sometimes we might think, well, man, I don't really need anybody right now. Well, let me tell you, there will be a point in time in your life where you need somebody to support you. And at this church, the way you're going to receive care and support is through our groups. There's no way with as many people that go to church here that one or two people can care for everybody. That's the reason we have groups. So I'm going to invite you to sign up for a group. You can take a look at that and see maybe what you might connect with. One of the things that's on there that's brand new is called a freedom group. If you're here and you're dealing with addiction of any type, if you've ever dealt with addiction, man, you want to be a support to somebody else, our freedom group, whether that's substance abuse, whether that's addictions that may be things that have controlled your life, it's lived in fear maybe sometimes, I want to encourage you to sign up for a freedom group. That's not for everybody, but there are some groups that maybe you would choose to be a part of. I'm going to invite you to be part of group life. Then the last card that's here I'm going to ask you, if you would, to grab it, and I'm going to give you a minute to take a look at it. I'm going to ask you to sow into the harvest. You might not know this, but at Christian Life Center, we have 2 feeding ministries that happen in Mexico. We feed more than 100 kids on a weekly basis. We also have a feeding program in Haiti. And for every $10 that you invest, that sponsors 1 child per month. $10. And I want to encourage you that you would help us to sow into the harvest. There again, if you're not from CLC, I'm not asking anything of you. If you're a guest, welcome. But if you're part of our church, I want to invite you to help us make a difference and sow into people's lives. Not only kids in those countries, but you'll see a list of all these local organizations that your church supports. We support it through missions giving. So if you sign up, we can help you to arrange that where it is deducted from your bank account monthly, where it just happens. We have people that already are doing that. Matter of fact, for all of you that served this last year and you had that automatically deducted from your account, thank you. And you don't have to re-sign up for that. It'll continue. If you'd like to increase that, you can mark it on there. But I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to take a look at those and ask God, when you're sitting here, as you look at this painting, God, what have you equipped me to do to make a difference?